How about now? Anything? Super weird. Super weird. Let's try it that way. All right, give me a thumbs up if you got me. I switched headphones. Oh, there we go. We got bass coming in right now. You hear me now? Okay, cool. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Man, we're just we're working through it all right now. Thank you guys for joining us for Irregular Republic episode 8. The left is funding racism again. So we're going to talk about the new SPLC bombshell that dropped, and then kind of some of the nonsense that has happened with all that. I'm going to bring up based right now. Let's see here. What's up, man? How you doing, buddy?
Hey, sorry about that, man. I was having some audio issues trying to get my mic working this morning, but
Hey,
we
don't
got it now.
I literally just had the same thing happen. So yeah, we're working through it together. So here we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're gonna chat today about the SPLC bombshell, and then kind of what that means for kind of everything going on, kind of, and then also the coincidence that are going on with the some of these halal right podcasters from Podcastistan that I like to call it, and then we'll just kind of chat about all the other ongoings of Iran. I know we chatted earlier about the upcoming 60-day reset and that kind of stuff. So they're not reset, but 60-day war powers uh, clock that's counting down. So we'll kind of chat about that. But real quick, I know I've had you on before, but just go ahead and introduce yourself again for those that don't know, and then we'll jump right into it, man.
All right, cool, man. I'm a retired Marine V-22 weapons and tactics instructor. I flew on the V-22 for about 10 years, and then I was medically retired from the Marine Corps. I am now trying to cut through all the propaganda that's out there and really try to do a service for people who don't have time to cut through the headlines and cut through the news and noise and actually bring the truth to people, because unfortunately in today's world, if you just have a I guess a surface view of what's going on, you really don't have an idea of what's really happening. So I figure I could use some of the training I received in the Marine Corps to be of service to people here out in the information space.
Yeah, man, that's what's so important right now, and I like to tell people, like, I'm not a big fan of the whole vet bro, like, let's talk about war stories podcast stuff anymore. I mean, that's been done for so long, and there's people that are doing it, and I mean, again, nothing against those guys that are doing that. That's all good and well, and I don't think we need to replicate that anymore. I think they've already got that covered, and they're doing great jobs at it. I think what we need to focus on is pushing out, what's propaganda, what are these patterns that we're seeing, what's the narratives that we're seeing getting shaped against us, and how can we fight back against it, and how can Americans just know, hey, what's real and what's not real, and just from again, just from like real people who are seeing this, and we're like, hey, I trained and I like planned and did all this stuff like in other countries, and now I'm seeing it done on our own country, and I would like it to stop, or at least like to raise awareness about how it's happening. So 100%, I think it's very important to jump in and do that. So appreciate you coming on today, dude. And again, everybody, please like and share and subscribe and all the things. We're on X right now, YouTube and Rumble. So trying to get YouTube and Rumble going a little bit more. The X is always the big one, but if you could jump on one of the other two and give them a like and a subscribe, that'd be great and would help us out a whole lot. Appreciate it so much. And then if you haven't followed Base and Bias, it's just at base_bias, right? Base.
Yep, that's correct. Yep.
Yep, and I got it. I got it in the description, and I have it in the actual post for on X as well. So please give him a follow as well. Puts out great stuff too, and just one of the common sense voices on social media that's important for you guys to follow. So, all right, so I want to jump in. I'm gonna pull this up real quick. Let's see. All right, for those of you who haven't seen this, let me know. Let me know if the audio is working.
All right, Todd Blanche is the acting
You got
U.S.
it?
Attorney General, and he joins us now. Sir, it's good to see you again. This Southern Poverty Law Center story, of course, adds to just a tremendous amount of fraud that is being uncovered in the operation of our government, a lot of fraud in the affiliated NGOs with parts of our government as well. I want to start and just get your reaction to what you guys have found here.
It's good to be here. Thank you. Look, what the grand jury found in the indictment returned yesterday is something that should be shocking to everybody in this country. You have a situation where you have an organization actively raising money for years and years and years, promising that their sole purpose was to root out racism, mostly in the South. What you saw and what's publicly available is a lot of activism, a lot of articles, a lot of pushback towards anybody who's conservative. But it turns out that they were spending, in this case, over $3 million over about a 10-year period, actually paying individuals associated with the same right-wing groups that they are claiming to try to dismantle. I mean, that's the definition of a bait and switch or of a fraud, and it's something that the grand jury, there's a lot of work went into that case, and it's something that should be very concerning to everybody in this country.
All right, Todd Blanche.
So you see that, right? So we see, and I think this is just scratching the surface too, right? This is the first one that they were like, we have everything in line. We're indicting this group right now. But I mean, the ADL, how many of these other groups have been doing the same exact thing, and these organizations have been doing the same exact thing, and how many indictments are about to come down from this? And I think that is. I mean, one, we all knew it was happening, right? It's so very clear. I mean, you could look at what just the patterns of what people are putting out, and I mean, when it barks like a lefty and it like walks like a lefty, you're like, okay, why is this person who used to be on the right and used to be pushing all the things on the right and used to be MAGA this and MAGA that, now all of a sudden is pushing the same things that Jackson Hinkle is pushing, and then now pushing the same things that Harry Sisson and all these other lefties are pushing now. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like I called this a long time ago. Not to brag or anything, but yeah, it's very obvious. It's what wasn't obvious is how the funding was being actually put through, and so I think that's what we're actually uncovering now is how these organizations were actually being funded through USAID. So not only were they funding, not only were they funding these racist and divisive organizations, but our government was funding them via these other organizational entities. So that's the very interesting thing is now, and Joe Biden based his whole campaign off of the Charlottesville debacle that happened down there, which now that we know was funded by the SPLC. And I don't know if you've got that clip of Nick Fuentes right after the Charlottesville protests. Nick Fuentes was interviewed on CNN, or not CNN, Time Magazine. I can try to send it to you if you don't have it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, you've got Nick Fuentes as a young man, and what the counter arguments that we keep seeing from the left right now is that the SPLC was trying to take down these organizations. They were trying to they were paying for informants to take these organizations down. Well, the only problem with that is they never actually took any organizations down. And the other thing is that's not their job either. They're not an investigative agency. They're not a law enforcement agency. So to say that they were funding informants, well, why would they need informants when they're not a law enforcement agency? And then
Right.
obviously nobody was an informant. They actually paid for these organizations to go do the bad things that they wanted to do. And the we knew that this whole racist on the whole racist movement on the right was inorganic, because you and I are on the right. We know the people on the right. We know that it's a LARP to say that it's just a trope to say that people on the right are all racist. So the SPLC, the left, because this wasn't happening organically, they had to make it happen so that they could have a false uh, narrative to be able to push their candidates, to be able to push their policies. And so
Hmm.
you literally you see what happened with a psyop on our whole nation, paid for by the government to install a particular candidate, which would be Joe Biden, and then also demonize organizations on the right, because they didn't they didn't fund the people who were actually influential. They didn't fund the Matt Walshes. They didn't fund the big names like Steven Crowder, people who actually were influential to people on the right. They funded these you know janky little
Hmm.
organizations that all they were was just a bunch of noise, and something that they could use to uh, try to smear the whole right with these just one little examples. So
They
it's
they
it's
effectively they effectively built some of these names. I mean, Nick Fuentes had no social media presence and no presence online really at all until Charlottesville. And so then Charlottesville put him on the map. I mean, like you said, he was in the what Times, um,
I think he's on Time or something.
yeah, the Time magazine or whatever article that was. That was his first like branching out, and then all of a sudden, then he starts his stuff, and he starts his podcast, and he starts his, then he eventually starts getting banned from some of these, some of these platforms once he gets a little bit bigger. But I mean, he's getting banned because he's a racist, and he's saying racist like things and praising Nazis and praising Stalin and like doing all these things. If you go back to some of his earlier stuff, I mean, he's gotten more clever about how he phrases things now, and he'll say certain things like now, like he'll be like, I'm a fan of Stalin, but like because of some of the things that he achieved, but not necessarily the way he achieved them. I'm like, well, he wouldn't have achieved anything if he hadn't have done the terrible things that he did. Like like this is
Mass
this
murder.
is yeah, like he mass murdered, and Stalin was honestly, I mean, the mass murder that Stalin did. I mean, he was leagues ahead of Hitler before Hitler even had killed 100,000 people. Stalin had killed millions. So
Yeah.
it's just funny to me that this the SPLC and then these organizations like this had to kind of justify their existence, and not to mention, I mean, after Charlottesville, their funding went through the roof as well. So it put them on the map as an organization that was actually needed to fight these things. So they're essentially acting as they're the fire department that started the fire so that they could then be needed to put out all the fires, right?
Yeah.
Which
They're
is
justifying
insane.
their own existence.
Yeah, self-licking ice cream cone, dude. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
so for those of you that don't know, I mean, if you haven't seen this thread, this is a pretty good thread by Patrick Casey here. Um, that goes through the indictment, and it kind of goes through everything that is in there. So, as you saw in the video, the SPLC spent more than $3 million of donor funds on informants from 2014. Informants is what they called them, by the way. They weren't informants. I mean, that was the term they used so that they could get away with doing what they thought they could get away with doing this. But I mean, an informant is an official term, or like a CI, right? A CI is like an official term.
Right.
What law enforcement does, like Base was talking about. that's not a thing that exists for a nonprofit to hire somebody as an informant. You can hire consultants maybe, right? Or you can hire uh, I don't know. There might be some other terms for that, but an informant would not be necessarily a term. I don't think that would make any sense in this regard. But whatever. Um,
An informant is also it's a legal process to be able to approve somebody being a CI, because what you're essentially doing is approving their ability to commit crime. Basically, they're able to commit crimes because they are a source of information to get other crimes, um,
right,
solved. So there's a whole process that goes behind making a legal CI, because that's a legal term too.
right. And a nonprofit that has no legal authority can actually like no law enforcement authority can actually authorize that either. So
Right.
it's all just silly. It's all just them just make not really. I don't want to say making up terms, but using legal terms that they don't have the authority to use to try to make it seem like they were doing something honorable when they clearly were not doing something honorable. All right, so the crux of the DOJ's. Go ahead.
The left likes to play word games. That's what they
Oh,
do.
oh, they do absolutely. So the crux of the DOJ's case is the SPLC did so duplicitously in violation of the law. Right. The first example is an individual who was involved with the 2017 Unite the Right rally in the Charlottesville, VA. Between 2015 and 2013, the SPLC paid him more than $270,000. Again, so we don't. The identity of these individuals will come out because they're probably getting indicted as well, right? And they just haven't released these individuals' names yet because that's part of a bigger case that they're honing in on, and so all of this will come out once the court proceedings go through and we get all of this information. So just we'll have to be a little bit patient on all of this, but I think it is. I mean, again, I don't necessarily think that this was some certain people who maybe we think it was, but I do think that certain people that have really big names now on this whole all right, I think they were definitely groomed or mentored by some of these people. And they were brought up by some of these people that were paid by the SPLC. So there's definitely fingerprints all over this, and there's definitely a I would say like a um what's the word I'm looking for here? Um, the intelligence community kind of uses it. Um, you know what I'm trying to.
Like a asset type.
Yes, asset development. So
um,
so what the intelligence community will do, and this is going to be a similar process here, is asset development. They will pay somebody, which would be whoever this F-37, F-37, right? So they'll pay them, right? But part of their job is not only going to be to do certain things, but it's also going to be asset development. So developing other assets that are going to be doing this job as well, or pushing the same information, or widening the breadth and the scope of this operation. And so what we're seeing now is this is 2017, right? So 9 years later, we're seeing the fruits of that labor and the fruits of that 270,000 from that perspective go through. So there's definitely fingerprints of all that on it.
Yeah, and that's a lot of money, man. That's not like small donations. That's
Well, especially 2017, right? I mean, yeah, it's still a lot of money today, right? But think about whatever amount of lump sum that was, whatever increments that they pay that in. I mean, that's just supplemental too. This is just supplemental income to these people. This is not like they're doing this anyway, and now they're getting extra money to do what they were already doing from these nonprofits to just do more of it and to do it better. And we're not even again we're just scratching the surface. We don't even know what other compensations and what other assistance they were given. They could have had other money sent to other organizations that they were a part of to assist in other things. They could have had, that money could have went to other places where they could have been paid salaries out of that from other like there's just so many different ways that this could have worked that 270 could have just been the like what they've uncovered so far.
Yeah.
And then he says this one's wild. The SPLC paid a member of the National Alliance over $1 million in less than a decade. At one point, At one point, the informant entered the headquarters of a presumably different organization and stole 25 boxes of their documents, which he delivered to the SPLC and later returned them. So they basically stole a bunch of intellectual property, probably scanned it all in, got all of their IP, and then he took it back so that no one would know that he did it. So, I mean, this is like basic corporate espionage at the same time too. So whatever organization I don't think it says it. Whatever organization they're talking about, he or she infiltrated and got all of this documentation. They copied it all and they put it back, hoping that no one would know. And obviously, they figured that out as well. This is wild, man. One informant at one point was the Imperial Wizard of the United Clans of America. Can you you realize the SPLC is what do you think the percentage wise of how many black people there are that work at the SPLC?
Percent.
Yeah, dude. It's like there's so many black people that work for the SPLC, and and so they all most of them, especially the higher levels of this organization, knew that this was happening, right? There's no I mean, sure, some of the people in the lower echelons of it didn't necessarily know, but everyone up in the higher echelons knew, and they were
involved with planning, organizational planning, or the funds, the finances.
Mhm.
They were aware.
Oh yeah, because they're also getting hit with money laundering. They're getting hit with wire fraud, like all these other indictments there, or these other charges are part of this indictment. And that means that whoever that means their finance department is a part of it. They were setting up other accounts to move money through. They were setting up other shell corporations to move money through. Like, this is insane. This is a conspiracy to commit what is essentially it's fraud. It's fraud, but it's also espionage. It's just it's crazy. This is crazy.
I mean, you could almost say that they subverted the election. I mean,
They did, yeah. Because yeah, you're right. Biden joined, put his name in the hat because of this incident, and was like, I'm running now because this was so bad. And
Yep.
and if you remember all the media that jumped on and completely took Trump's words out of context too, and they jumped on that one line and took it out of context and made it seem like Trump was supporting these neo-Nazis as well. I mean, how much of that was a part of it too? Like, how much of the media was? I'm not saying necessarily saying funded by these people, but it's all part of the same narrative building.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure. Yeah. And that lie went for years. I mean, I've been still debunking that lie to people. It's insane how far that went and how deeply ingrained into people that was, because people repeated that over and over. Oh, there was fine people on both sides. And that's the other thing, is they like to come up with those quick little blurbs, like fine people on both sides, and they'll repeat it over and over and over again.
Yep.
Get it out
Yep.
through the media. Yeah.
Yep.
The media
And I mean,
definitely complicit.
that's how narratives begin, and that's how they get flushed out, and then that's how you get this propaganda that has pushed for years now. Because there's people today that you could walk up on the street and you could be like, do you think that Donald Trump's a racist? And they would say, yeah. And you'd be like, why do you think that? And they'd be like, well, because Charlottesville, he said that, And then you'd be like, well, okay, that was completely misrepresented, and let me show you the full clip. And then they would still like they've had that so ingrained in them that it's really hard to break that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, they don't want to. People don't want to be proven wrong, especially if they've had this idea for so long. They would rather just keep the lie in their head than to actually change their views on things. It's so much easier to do that.
Right. All right. Another informant was the former chairman of the National Alliance. He received $140,000 over 7 years, which that is still, that one doesn't seem like as much money, but it's still a decent amount of it's still a decent amount of money. It's because this is all just extra money for them to do just little things here and there, right? This is, hey, we're gonna put you on this payroll, and we're gonna have you do this, and it's just push a little bit here, push a little bit there. It's crazy how this works.
Yeah.
SPLC paid the national president of the American Front. Remember the American Front, guys? That's that stupid fake
Patriot Front.
or Patriot Front. Is that the same thing? Is that the same
I
thing?
think so. That's what I was when I saw that. That's what came to my mind. And you know, for the longest time, you knew that was some sort of operation, but I, I knew it wasn't being funded directly by the Fed, by the FBI. And I kept saying that this isn't directly from the Feds, but now I see how that all went through and the funding went through. It makes a lot
Yeah,
of sense now.
they're all, and that's why the feds are. Everyone likes to push it on to like the feds, but people don't understand how bureaucracies work and
Mhm.
how much of a nightmare that would be to try to hide that from everybody because not everybody's going to be on board with that. Like at the
Yeah.
end of the day, yes, is there some corruption in the FBI? Probably, yeah. There's some corruption in every agency in existence just because people are inherently going to be corrupt at some point. Somebody somewhere is going to be corrupt and going to do something wrong.
Mhm.
But you can't to have a operation of that scale, like the Patriot Front operation, where you have all of these people involved, right? You're not going to be able to push that through enough. Like that bureaucracy channel is too big. There's too many people involved. There's legal involved. There's all this stuff. There would be funding. There would be all the things. It would have to go through all these different channels, and that somebody's not going to be okay with that. And someone would either whistleblow, someone would do something, right? So that is unrealistic to me. I didn't ever think that they were actually feds. Now, NGOs using federal money that maybe the federal government isn't 100% sure of what is happening. Yes, that is entirely plausible. So all these NGOs, and this is the big issue here, and actually we'll talk about this. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Have you seen the new proposed changes the IRS is putting on the 990 disclosures that are about to come through? I'll pull that up a little bit too. This is actually a really good thing that's about to come through that they're pushing from the IRS is going to, well, they need to do a lot more, but this is at least one good step that'll change a lot of how these NGOs operate.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah,
here's a
the NGOs do, and I've talked about this. This has been a big focus of mine and my YouTube channel and everything ever since I started was trying to bring to light what the NGOs were doing. They're doing things that governments can't do by nature of the law. And so this is how governments are able to, and this was big on the whole World Economic Forum, Great Reset thing, is they wanted to bring about everything through NGOs, through government. It's called private public cooperation, is what they wanted. And so they were actually, the governments have been using these NGOs. It's just like the whole uh, migrants, the illegal immigration thing.
yep,
The government wasn't funding that directly because they can't,
right,
but they can fund these companies
yep.
can do it, or nonprofits. So yeah, I mean it's NGOs
Oh,
huge.
we can talk
Part.
about that. I did a whole article on the NGOs and the under Biden and how much money was funneled to all these different and like what crazy amount to Catholic the Catholic charities and all these like we're talking billions of dollars to move illegal immigrants across around the country once they were let in. It's mind-boggling. So yeah, so in a sense, yes, the Fed is creating conditions and the funding for this to happen, but they're not the ones actually orchestrating. I mean, I guess they even are kind of
Directly
orchestrating.
orchestrated.
Yeah, they're not directly
Not
orchestrating. They're not the ones.
yeah.
They're not the ones pulling all the strings right there, but they're creating the system that allows it to happen.
Yeah.
So it's bad either way you look at it, right?
They're
But
giving
anyways,
it the infrastructure. They're giving it the funding that it needs to exist.
yep. This is one of the parts, the fictitious entities. All right, so to funnel its donors' money to avowed neo-Nazi and Klan members, more than a little funny if you think about it.
Hmm.
It really is. The
It,
SPLC allegedly employed a network of fictitious entities with names like Northwest Technologies and Tech Writers Group. None of these entities were incorporated. So, Center Investigative Agency, CIA. So they like you can't make this shit up, dude. This is insane to me. It's so funny.
oh man, yeah. They're
Ah,
not even creative in their names.
no. Rare Books Warehouse. Fox Photography. Like, oh. So we'll see more come down about this. That's a decent thread if you want to go through that to kind of see a little bit more of what's going on with SPLC. indictment. And then I wanted to kind of highlight some of this real quick. So share this instead. All right. So here we got Candace Owens. Let me blow this up a little bit. So no show today. Sorry. Thought I'd announced I was traveling with my family. See you guys next week. All of a sudden. So this is yesterday, right? Yesterday evening. And then you have this. This is yesterday as well. This is yesterday at 8:30 p.m. He's taking a step back as well. Then you got Nick Fuentes. All of a sudden he's in Italy, and his show's paused all of a sudden. And mind everybody, like me and bass right now, like I'm the only one doing this, man. Like my audio wasn't working because I put a headphone in and it didn't like gel with everything, and I'm the only one working on this kind of stuff. And I don't know what I'm even doing half the time, so like some of this stuff isn't gonna work all the time. These people have teams. They have production teams. They have like they have teams that are working on their stuff all of the time. A lot of them, a lot of them even have people that are posting on their, on their socials, and they're not even posting half the stuff that's on there, or they have it set up to where they're pushing through AI to post stuff all the time or whatever. So like the idea that, and Sneeko also paused
Oh,
his
that's
stream.
right, he did too. Yep.
Yeah, Sneeko paused his stream for a little bit too. So, but to think that Candace Owens just, oh whoops, I forgot to announce that we're traveling on a family trip. All of a sudden, uh, and like the production team didn't already have that information, and like wasn't already planned, and like they didn't have other episode like pre-recorded stuff that they were gonna push in that stead. Like it's laughable, and it just shows you how stupid that they believe that everybody actually is. They genuinely believe that everyone that all of their followers and all of their viewers are that stupid that they can do that, and they can just get away with it, and no one's going to question them, and no one's going to say anything about it. And
Well,
I mean,
unfortunately, the unfortunate thing is that there are people stupid enough out there to believe it, and so as long as there are, they will continue to grift the grift. I mean, they're gonna try to monetize that as much as they can. But yeah, like you said, just you and I know what it's like to try to start a podcast and start, a YouTube channel or whatever. It's not easy. And these people who just come up out of nowhere and are suddenly popular, that they had either financial backing or, help from somebody, because it doesn't happen like that. You know what I
yep,
mean? It takes a lot of work and
yep,
grinding. So yeah,
yep,
it's you can tell when something's not organic,
yep.
and
I mean,
it's
I'm just now getting to the point like where I can like edit clips and like post them now, and like it's
mhm.
been a whole process just learning how to do that on my own, and like, yeah, I mean, eventually, I might hire somebody, to like help with certain little things here and there, if I ever make enough money off of any of this to even do that,
Yeah,
which
that's a natural progression. You
in
know what I mean?
natural progression, you're right, but that's never even the goal for this. My goal here, simply, I like, I've set, I can live, I'm comfortable. I've VA, like I'm not an expensive person anyway. I don't need like all the toys and bells and whistles. I have I have enough guns at this point where, I mean, we can always have more guns, right? But
Yeah.
I also, I don't need to go buy a new one every month, even though I would love to, right? But
Yeah.
I'm simple. I'm one of those dudes. I want some land. I want some chickens and some goats, maybe a milk cow and a little bit of a little, farm gardenish thing. And and then I just want to like make sure that America stays America so my kids can grow up in it. And that's all I want. That's all I ever really want. And if I can do this and achieve that, then I'm golden with it. So, and then I think you and probably some of the guys that we, Matt Tardio and some of the other guys that we work with and we do shows with, and we kind of have the same mentality. Like Gary Melton, he has the same mentality. Like he has his own business. He makes his own money from Paramount Tactical. Like he does the online stuff that he does now. He does the shows that he does now purely because he sees the need for it, not because he needs the money from it, right? And so I think it's important for people to find these genuine shows and these genuine people having conversations, and then also we need to make fun of we need to I call it sanity through ridicule, because we have to make fun of these idiots and we have to call them out and we have to be like, no, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You need to be ridiculed for that, and this is what's actually real. So
Yeah, I'm the same way, and like I've always said that as long as I've got one person watching, then I'm gonna keep going. Because it, my thing was originally it was kind of like a therapeutic thing, where I would just see some BS and I needed to get my voice out and just get my view out there. And then once I did it, it was kind of like a weight off my back. It's been said, it's out there in the ether, and also some of the people that I went to church with, I go to church with a lot of elderly people, and they actually they really like my stuff. So they were a big motivation for me. And because I want to make sure that elderly people tend to trust what they see on TV and the mainstream media, and I need I saw a need to get some real information out to people, and that is that is my motivation. I'm like you. I'm 100% disabled. I'm not rich. It's not. I don't think it's enough money to make a great living off of, but I can survive. And if I can do this and make a little bit of money, that's great. But the core motivation, I don't ever want to lose that, which is to actually get the truth out to people and actually um, bring people into reality, and cut through these propaganda and narratives. As long as I think as long as we keep that principle, we'll do great. And again, it's not about being profitable, even though that's never bad. I'm not gonna ever turn down any money unless it's from like Russia or something. But uh, I, the motivation is purely to get the truth out to people, and that's what I want to
yeah,
do. And I do
well,
like trolling people too, so that's fun.
I would turn down anything. I, I would I wouldn't accept any money that came with anything,
With any strings
any
attached.
any string. Well, honestly, that's why I want to keep mine like subscriber based and like
Mhm.
the people, but you do still have to worry about audience capture. But also at the same time, like I've been the same account since I was 500 followers till I am now, and I've lost followers because I've kept my same views, and some of these people have like there's been people that I used to do spaces with and I used to do have conversations with, and now they've kind of flipped to this like anti-Israel. They fell for that thing, and now they're like, yo, you're just a shill now. And I'm like, I've been the same exact same views about Israel all the way through. You're the one that changed, and now you're the one that is mad about that. And I don't care, dude. I don't care if you don't want to follow me anymore. If you don't want to, like, that's fine, dude. This is a free country. I'm going to say what I want to say and what I believe in all of the time, no matter what, hands down. And the growth of my platforms is going to be entirely controlled by me, always, no matter what. And I think that's a problem that we've seen, like with Sean Ryan. I don't think that Sean Ryan's in the same exact boat as like Nick Fuentes and some of these other people with they're like fully either captured or fully just pushing this. I think I do disagree with a lot of the things that he's kind of pushing now, and I think he's blackpilled. And but I think his is more that his studio is just in charge of who they're bringing on and the content, and I think he's just kind of a muppet in it at this point. I think he's just kind of like he's now he's now Elmo, or he's now the Kermit the Frog, and he just has to like get up there and be green, and then he'll keep getting money, and that is what I would never allow to happen. Like, I'm not saying I wouldn't have a big show someday if it ever got to that, but I can guarantee you that like ain't nobody ever gonna tell me that I don't give a damn if they're like, hey, if we did this show with this person, you would make so much money. I'm like, I don't care if you're gonna pay me $100 million to do a show with Dugan. No, like the only way I'm doing a show with Dugan is if I can literally just call him the communist piece of shit that he is the entire time, and just like call him out and be like,
Mhm.
you're lying, you're lying, you're lying the whole time. If I can do that, then I'll do a debate, if you want to call it. I'll do a debate with him. But um, I think that's this. I think that's the thing is they people also like they're talking about Tucker and they're like, Tucker's a journalist. He has to interview these people even if he doesn't agree with them. Like, softball interviews of these terrible people is not the answer, right?
Yeah.
Like saying like bringing on Putin and then not ever once questioning Putin on anything that he said is not the way that a journalist is actually supposed to do something, right? Like, if you, I mean, you remember like some of the old school 60 Minutes interviews, like they didn't
Well,
the way.
even
Go
Tucker
ahead.
himself, even Tucker
Yeah,
himself, back in the day would go after people on it, on air in his interviews, and that's one of the things that I kind of liked about him. And
hmm
so when you when you go from that to just accepting whatever somebody says and nodding your head along with it when it's egregious BS,
right.
that's not. There's something's wrong there.
I wish I don't know if I have time to find that clip, but he had Nick Fuentes on, and Nick Fuentes was like, oh, he said a date, and he said, oh yeah, it's one of my favorite dates, and Tucker was like, why? And he was like, that's Joseph Stalin's birthday, and he was like, what? He was like, oh, and he was like, and Nick Fuentes was like, yeah, I'm a fan, and zero pushback. He didn't say like, you're a fan of one of the biggest mass murderers in history, like that's not something that I would be a fan of. Like, why would you be a fan of someone terrible like that? He was just like, oh, and just like kind of just went along with it. Like, who are these people, dude? Like, again, you know, it's not always productive. I went on with Owen Schroyer, and you can't have a productive conversation with these people because all they do is lie. Like, I would call out Owen Schroyer, and I'm like, no, that's not true. This is what's actually happening, and he'd be like, oh, well, you support the IDF and they just kill children. I'm like, they don't, right? Like, in war, sometimes children and civilians are going to die. That is super unfortunate. I wish that war wasn't that way, but that's the way war is and has always and will always be. There's always going to be collateral damage that happens in war, and civilians are always going to catch the brunt of that, especially when you're fighting terrorists who hide behind civilians in urban populations. There's no way to get around that, right? And and then they circular argument around it, or they frame the argument a certain way, and then even when you call them out, then they just disregard it and lie. And so how are you supposed to argue in good faith with people like this? You can't, right? And then they're like, well, I beat you in the argument. Like, no, you didn't. You just lied the whole time. and
And
and then
try to, they try to morally equate, the IDF with the Hezbollah, and only one side actually cares about collateral damage. Only one side is actually taking steps to minimize collateral damage, but that's the only side that's being criticized for the collateral damage, and that's dishonest. That's the thing where, if you're going to start at a position where you're going to equate morally these two things, then we're not going to have an honest conversation, because that's just not
right,
the way it is.
right. It's really hard to, yeah, I mean, and you can bring out facts, and like I did an entire article on the ROI from Israel, for example, and he was like, well, you got all your information from the government, so it's all lies. I was like, okay,
Well, it's like
has the
yesterday. I was arguing with somebody about the Jews in Tehran, or in Iran. I was talking about how they're in hiding right now. They're trying to stay low. They're not. Nobody's been able to communicate with them. There's only 10,000 out of
right?
85 million people in that country.
hmm
Uh, and the guy's like, I shared a source from the Times of Israel, and he said, "Oh, you're getting your information from the Times of Israel." Well, okay, but you're not getting any information from anywhere, so you
Yeah,
can't really argue with my source when you don't have one, or your source is the IRGC, who is known for lying. Their whole
right.
existence is a lie. You know what I mean?
What's like Mario? That, yeah, it was on that post Mario put out, and he's like, why haven't we heard about anything terrible happening to Jews in Iran? Because it's not happening. I'm like, one, the media in Iran is completely controlled by Iran. just like the media in China is completely controlled by China, just like the media in North Korea is completely controlled by North Korea. That's like saying nothing bad happens in North Korea to the North Korean population because we don't get any bad news out of North Korea. Like it's insane to me. It's like when I can't remember the journalist, but when I think it was about 30, it was like 1935, 1937 time, somewhere around there, when that journalist went to the Soviet Union to go like tour through Ukraine and then go tour through some of the other to Belarus and some of the parts of the Soviet Union, and they staged the whole thing for him, right? They like brought him through. They literally brought in like working vehicles from other parts of the Soviet Union and set up like they put food in the storefronts. They like it was a whole staged thing for this reporter, and so he was like, "Oh yeah, everything looked great there." He went and toured a school, and they like got the healthiest kids from the country that they could find, and they put them all together in one school and like gave them a meal, and so that they could like not lie. Like it's just the whole thing. It's all canned. It's all fake. It's the same. That's the same concept they're going to do because they're state run and funded media. So that's what's wild to me is that people believe this stuff. Like if you have ever seen anything from Russia Today, the RT, which they switched their whole model to just RT. They don't even use Russia Today in anywhere. They changed the name completely to RT so that you wouldn't think that it's Russian propaganda. But it's literally financed and run through the Russian state office. Like they have their own part of the Kremlin. I don't know if it's through the Kremlin or through their government, but it's like government run media. So that Sputnik, there's a few other ones too, and that they're only approved narratives that the Russian Federation allows to be put through. So if you're watching any of that, like they're reposting Tucker for a reason. They're reposting all of these podcasters from America for a reason because
Mhm.
it's the same talking points that they want pushed. It's insane to me.
Yeah, and I don't. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised about Russia coming closer to Muslims and Islamists. I w- I had always thought that they had a big issue with
Mm-mm.
Muslims, but it seems like
No,
maybe
they're the
them is bringing them to.
Russia's actually the fastest growing Muslim population in Europe. They're at almost 20% Muslim now. Yeah, that's something they've been trying to hide for a while, and people just don't understand. Like so, you had Soviet Kazakhstan, you had all these other the Soviet bloc countries down kind of southern Soviet countries, and a lot of those are Russian. So like Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, all those are Muslim countries, right?
Yeah.
And they're highly Russian influenced, and they're not the same. They're not the same kind of like Shia Muslims or Muslims that you would see in Iraq or Afghanistan or Iran necessarily. They're not as quite as like I don't want to call them like radical and I don't want to call them they're not secular either. They're not like secular Muslims, kind of like what you would see in Indonesia and some of these other places in Asia, but they're kind of like in between. So they have but they're pushing and they've been migrating into Russia, and yeah, Russia has a fast growing Muslim population, and it's something that they haven't really they haven't really viewed as a problem. And again, because Marxism and communism, socialism, all that actually works really well with Islamism. Like they fit in with that religious theocracy fairly well. And there's a reason why, if you go back and look at history too, why Hitler actually admired the Muslims. He didn't want to like be one with him, and the other issue you have is that communism and well, Marxism, they want the state to be the deity essentially. They don't want anything to be above the state. I mean, literally, Stalin put out his first commandment, right? Like that's the
Yeah.
first, when he was first taking power, he put out like the first commandment of Stalin, which is hilarious because the first commandment's actually there shall be no other God
Right.
other, like so.
Yeah.
Well, here we are, so but the authoritarianism that goes along with Islamism, especially like Sharia law and that kind of stuff, they actually work well together. And so I think that they look at it as a tool that can be used, and then they would just try to crush it later. So it's again, it's the same concept as how Hitler used the Social Democrats. He used the SA, the brown shirts, that was a bunch of like Ernst Röhm was gay, and there's a bunch of homosexuality that was going along with the SA, and all the brown shirts is weird, really weird kind of cultures and going on with the Social Democrats. He used all those to unite against the communists and to take power. And then once he took power, then the Night of Long Knives happens, and he ends up killing most of the top leadership of the SA, and that brought in the SS to kind of, which was his organization, to take control of the policing, the state policing. So history is fascinating to me. So when I see all of these things kind of unfolding again, right? We've had 70 years now, more than that, almost 100 years now for some of this stuff to kind of like percolate and to just move through societies and to change and mold. And that's the other thing too, is there's no perfect subset or perfect definition of what these ideologies have to be or have to fit into, right? I mean, Italian fascism was different than German fascism. The if you want to look at the what was it called in Spain? The I can't remember the name of it. You know what I'm talking about, though. The communist, they kind of aligned with the communists from Soviet Russia, but that kind of pushed in Spain. But it was different than what was actually happening in Russia. So um, you, they mold these ideologies to fit with the culture, to fit with what's happening in the country, in the area that they're trying to push them to. So there's no perfect definition of what is fascism. Well, it depends, man, because
Mhm.
because all of these collectivist ideologies. What's the difference between communism and socialism? And yeah, you can go in and you can say like socialism is the state doing this, and communism is the state doing this, and so on and so forth. It's really just a collective that they elevate, and you could break it down to the simplest terms. And then everything else from that, the nuance is going to just depend on the culture and the necessity of what they need to gain authoritarian power. And so
Yeah.
that's what we're seeing.
Well, the base of all of that is authoritarian power, and that's what they all have in common with each other, and that's why they all get along. So Mao didn't want to be friends with Stalin because he had a different idea of what communism was than Stalin did, and
Yep.
so there's different communisms. Each country has their own communism, and fascism or whatever Hitler had was not very far off from what communism is either. So
Right.
yeah, we try to put these labels on them and act like they're complete opposites, but really they're not. They're all kind of it's like that the diagram that mixes together whatever, where the you got the three circles and then
Venn
they
diagram.
overlap. Yeah, that's it. So,
Kamala loves Venn diagrams.
yeah. Well, she should do one about communism and fascism
Right.
and authoritarian Marxism and in a way, democracy isn't too far off from that either. Pure democracy. So, um, yeah, and I just don't. I think it's people need to stop looking at it as two opposing things, and really just any kind of authoritarian government control needs to be, especially here in the United States, needs to be looked at with a an eye of suspicion. We don't want our government to have control of anything because every time they take control of something, they end up messing it up. So
Yep.
that's what we need to be against. And in Islam, I go into a lot of these spaces, not recently, but I've talked to a lot of these Islamists from overseas and everything, and they believe that their religion is the perfect societal system, the perfect governmental system. They and that's why it does kind of mesh with communism because they it's like they can't
Mhm.
talk about their religion without talking about how well it is or how well a society does under their religion or how
Yep.
well or how good of a government system it is. And that's what I keep telling these people is like, look, I get that you think it's you're trying to defend your religion by saying it's a great system and this and that, but look, in the United States, we're not going to play that game. We're not going to have these systems because you think it's better. We have what we have, and we're not going to change that. And so and then they act like Sharia law is not a big deal. One of the guys was on there saying, I only hear Sharia law from like rednecks and things like that. That's the only time I ever hear it mentioned. No, that's not true. I mean, England, over in London, they already have Sharia courts.
Hmm.
They had a judge from their Supreme Court say that Sharia law is compatible with English law, and it's not compatible with United States law. I'll tell you that, not at all. So yeah, that we I see an encroachment come in a lot of different places like Texas and
Hmm.
what is it,
Oh,
Utah, I think. As well.
Texas and Florida have huge Muslim problems right now, and I'm really hoping that they acknowledge it, so there's another thing that the IRS needs to do, and they have to do it across the board, and that means for Christian churches as well. But and I realize that there's far less Christian churches that are radical or doing anything wrong, but it has to happen. They have to start making churches provide 990s with the same level of public scrutiny that nonprofits have. That you still like, I don't mind the tax free stuff. Like they can still be tax free, but most people don't realize is that if you're considered a church, if you're considered a temple, a synagogue, like whatever church, any of the things, you do not have to you do not have to file a 990. You don't have to file anything to the IRS at all. There's never any actual outside scrutiny. There's no public scrutiny on any of your finances whatsoever. You're just supposed to keep your records in the event that the IRS comes to audit you. But how would the IRS come to audit you unless there was scrutiny brought to onto you somehow, right? So and how is the IRS doesn't have the manpower or the ability. I mean, how many churches alone, right? How many Christian churches alone are there in the United States? Thousands, hundreds of thousands. Like, who knows? How many mosques? How many? Like, you go through it all. There's too many for that to be a plausible thing for the IRS to actually take on without any other mechanism. Now, if you make them file 990s, right? You make them file 990s just like the nonprofits do. Now you allow the populace just like we do. Like, so just like I'll go through and I'll pull 990s from these nonprofits and I'll be like, what is that? Why, where this weird company, this weird nonprofit was 100% funded by government grants. And now they're giving all this money, and they're paying 70-80% of their money out to salaries. So why are they even existing? Like, what's going on right now? Paul, so we can break some of these things down and we can see what's actually going on. That has to happen with churches. And it's something that needs to change immediately, because again, we're in a stage now where there's so much money. Like, I'm still working on this article, and it's because I've found so much more stuff and I keep finding more stuff to add to it, and now it's become this thing that's become like a series. I'm like, oh. But there's a nonprofit out of Texas that's linked to a bunch of some of the more radical mosques across the country that have especially one of the mosques had an imam that right after Cavani was killed was like, our leader has been murdered by the evil American regime. We must rise up. Blah blah blah. This nonprofit gave them money. This nonprofit sent 740 million dollars to Yemen in the last 4 or 5 years. And none of that money is accounted for. No, where did it come from? Nobody knows, because it's only a 990. They only have to disclose the fact that they received it and then sent it. Who sent it? What did they send it for? Nobody knows, right? It's one little label that says like medical, right? So what does that even mean, man? Like, who's supposed to be, taking, like, who's supposed to be putting accountability on this stuff? And then that's just the things that we can see. Imagine these mosques, these massive mosques that are, who knows how much money they're getting in, and who knows where they're sending that money to.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, and I don't know if you heard about this, but the pistachio farms out in California
Hmm.
were funding Iran and a lot of the terrorist groups through back channels, the way they do their money. But yeah, it's all over the place. The United States has been taken advantage of by several different entities. China, the Islamists, um, and yeah, if we want to keep this nation, we're gonna have to do something to stop it,
Mhm.
because it's a real problem.
Mhm.
Especially with the birthright citizenship. That's a whole nother issue. I don't know how that's going to work out, but we may have to just write new legislation if the Supreme Court doesn't rule in favor. Then hopefully we can get legislation through. But Congress can't do anything. They're pretty much
Oh,
helpless.
then that's the hard part here is like I'm at a crossroads with what needs to happen. Like the Save Act needs to be implemented because I mean I'm a believer in that, but I'm also against getting rid of the filibuster because I'm just against giving power. I'm against taking away the protections for the minority because we're going to be the minority again. That's just like we can't just be, we can't just lie to ourselves and say that Democrats are never going to win again. Now,
They keep saying that
that's just
they keep they keep saying that if Democrats come back into power, they're going to do that. But they already had the opportunity to do that last
yeah.
administration, and they didn't do it. So
Not only last administration, they had a supermajority under Obama, and they could have done it, and they could have done a lot more under Obama. The only thing that's holding them back is the same thing that's holding like there are still these precedents that are in place. There are still the facts that the Constitution is still the Constitution, and there are still protections in place. And I just don't think that we need to be the ones removing those protections. So I don't know. I'm not like I'm a constitutionalist. I do admit that I need to. There are people that have a more legalistic understanding of the Constitution than I do. Like there's lawyers that could speak on this more intelligently than me, and I that's probably someone I need to figure out who I could bring on and have kind of break this down. Like what's the best way to make this work, and then like what's the best way to fix Congress? Like how do we fix this problem where Congress is just useless? Like how do we change? And I understand it's because it's we have a highly polarized bipartisan system right now, but the Democrats don't seem to have a problem getting lockstep and toeing the line when it is important for them. But on the Republican side, we can't seem to join together to fight for what's important to save our lives, and that like is a huge problem for our side, for me, because it's just like I understand that like Susan Collins up in Maine is probably the best we're going to get in Maine, but like you're telling me Markowski's the best we can get in Alaska, really? Like you're telling me some of these other guys are the best that we could get, and I just don't, yeah, I just don't believe some of that. Like we need to, one, we have to get better at uniting behind constitutionalists, that Republican constitutionalists that are going to come in and be like, I believe in the Constitution. I'm going to vote my constituency in line with the Constitution, and then we have to, one, follow what they're doing, and then hold them accountable for that. And that it's really hard because people are busy.
Mhm.
The other thing I think we've talked about this before too is conservatives conservatives are just like I view the government as a hindrance to my everyday life. I like the fact that I have to go do anything with the government, and I have to like if I have to get a permit, or if I have to go like the when my last baby was born, like they don't just give you a birth, which I didn't realize this until the last few babies, but they don't just give you a birth certificate. You actually have to go get their birth certificate later, and pay for it and get it. And like that's a hindrance. That's just one extra step for me to now go do, right? And so it's a hindrance to me. But as conservatives, we have to join in. I know we want to be left alone, and we want to just live our lives. We want to raise our children, and we want to, build our homesteads, and just like, but we have to join in. We have to join our local governments and our school boards and our things, because all these things are going to be taken from us if we don't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's i- the thing about our system of government, and you got to keep in mind that the Constitution and the framers designed our government to be the way it is right now, as far as ineffective. Um, they did it that way because they didn't want quick changes to the government. They didn't want the populism, basically. They don't
Hmm.
the mob rule. If things waves of emotion run through the country, and people will want something, and just because 90% of the country wants it doesn't mean that it's good in the end for the nation. So they kind of designed it to where it's hard to get anything passed through the government. It's hard to make
Hmm.
changes to the government. So
Hmm.
that's one thing you got to kind of take with a grain of salt. But also, you do make a good point about us being just want to be left alone and not have to deal with the government. I think that is a big issue. But that's the other thing, is if we want to live in a nation that is run by the people for the people, we have to be active in our government. We have to actually be part of that, because
Hmm.
otherwise you're going to have the people who love the government, love or think the government is, their God, because they don't have any other moral compass or, you know, religious compass like that. So
Hmm.
if you don't stop those people, if those are the people that are going to take over. So yeah, we have to remind conservatives that, this is your government too. And in order for this government to function, you have to be active. You have to be, this is a people run government, and so you're part of the people, and if you have a complaint about what's going on, then do something about it,
Right.
or try. I mean, that's
Hmm.
you can't just sit there and hope others are going to take care of the problem, because we've
Right.
seen that's not going to happen at all.
Well, that was why I'm trying to push back on this messaging that like again we talk about. I hate that we have to talk about Nick Fuentes and some of these people so much, but these people that are trying to say like the right is they failed us and they're terrible. We need to just vote Democrat. We need to punish the GOP. Like that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. You never switch sides and go with people you absolutely that go against everything that you believe in and everything that you stand for to punish your own side. Why? Like that's the dumbest thing ever. You make changes from the driver's seat, not from the trunk, right? You don't give over the leadership to your country to the bad guys so that you can punish the good guy. Like and I'm not saying necessarily the GOP is the good guys, right? There's plenty of them that are idiots and doing things that I disagree with, and they're half the time they're wholly ineffective in my opinion. But we have so many we have a lot of people in the GOP that are very competent and are very um, they're in tune with what the people need. Like look at Ron DeSantis for a second. Look at what he's done to Florida. And, he barely won his first election in Florida because no one really knew who he was, and Florida was a purple state at that time. And now Florida is a deep, deep red. Like there's a Democrat's not going to win in Florida for another 20 years unless Donald's or someone terrible wins and then just runs it into the ground really quickly, right? But
Mhm.
but DeSantis has set up Florida to be a deep red state for a long time, assuming we get semi-competent leadership to continue on in there. And but I still don't see a lot of people that are like pushing for someone like DeSantis to run in 2028, and I'm wondering like why are we and we when we go back, and I understand that why everyone kind of got behind Trump for 24, and again I'm not upset with some of the things that Trump has done are not what I would have what 100% agree with. I understand why he did some of the tariff stuff. I don't agree. Like again, we can talk about all that all day long. There's all kinds of different nuances involved, and you're not supposed to agree with everything that is every person or every politician does. That literally makes you in a cult if you agree with everything they do no matter what, right?
Mhm.
But I think it's like we have certain members in the GOP that are very competent, that are very smart, and that do have conservative values, and we need to be elevating those people, and then we need to be finding the next up and coming people that are running, and we need to be elevating those people that are conservatives that want to enshrine the Constitution and want to continue to push the Constitution and the importance of the Constitution. And that's our duty it's our duty to maintain our republic. And that the founding fathers were very, very, very adamant about that as well. And I do like the point you made that the founding fathers were actually, they were as scared, if not more so, of a populist uprising taking control and then radically changing the government and the constitution as they were of a tyrannical like king taking control or a dictator taking control. That, like, those two things are what really what they feared the most, and it was why they made the constitution and wrote everything the way they did. And so it's kind of interesting to think about that. But um, we have some of these examples. We have some people that are doing great things that we need to elevate, and cutting through that noise and getting, highlighting these people that are doing great things, that have truly shown that they are for the people, that they're competent and they can do lasting changes in a state that was purple 10 years ago and is now deep red. That's important. And so I think that messaging, that's something we need to concentrate on. And I'm guilty of it as well, is we get sucked in to fighting all these idiots that are just pushing all this nonsense. And like I don't want to have to defend Israel and the Jewish people all the time. Like, don't get me wrong, I have nothing negative against them. I think the Israeli-U.S. alliance is very strong, and it's very beneficial to the United States. But it's not also something that I should have to talk about every damn day. And I shouldn't have to talk about Jewish people. There's only 15 million of them. Like, it's just not something that me as a Christian from Texas now living in North Carolina should have to talk about every day. And we have to get better about ignoring some of that noise that they're pushing, which is propaganda, which is that it's designed for us to have to engage with it, so that to call it out and for what it is. And we still have to do that, and sometimes, but we do still need to be pushing back against the left and what the left is pushing. And then like what's happening in Virginia. And a judge did just stop that gerrymandering that's happening in Virginia, but like we need to be highlighting some of that stuff. Like, what is the left doing to try to actually take, make it to where Republicans are never going to have a voice in Virginia ever again? We need to be highlighting that as well. So I got to get better at that. Like, we all got to get better at that. And we got to understand that the real fight is actually with the progressive Democrats and the left. And the reality of the situation is that the progressive Democrats have taken control of the Democratic Party. And that's reality.
Yeah. I'm very guilty of falling into, ridicule, because like you said, the ridicule thing, I like to joke on people. I like to, troll people. But somebody kind of commented the other day, I'm not going to mention who they were, but they were like, you're not focused where you should be focused. Your homies are over here. Like, you should be focused over here. Stop focusing on this BS. I took that as a good point. I respect that person. So, I think we do need to be careful of what we're focusing on, because it also, not only does it ignore or take, it takes attention away from the real issues, but it also boosts the BS issue that we're
Yep.
ridiculing, because we're adding some sort of, legitimacy to it by even acknowledging it. But
Mhm.
point. I mean, that's a really good point. I think that is something that we need to work on, together as conservatives, to maybe keep each other honest, and remind each other what's important, at the moment. Sometimes, it's good to do.
Absolutely. No, I think that is, I think it's something definitely we need to. And like I said, I get sucked into it because what I hate is when people lie. That's what pisses me off. And it's, they're lying about something that I know is 100% a lie, and and they're vilifying innocent people, and they're vilifying an entire group of people, an entire country of people, to facilitate that lie, and that pisses me off. And so I feel like I have to respond to that. And I'm not going to do that, but you're right. Like, it is important too that we recognize that. And maybe we just also have to add into, when we do call that out, like, the real reason they're doing this is to distract us from what's really going on over here in Virginia, what's really going on over here in Utah, what's really going on over here in California. Like, here, I actually want to pull this up. I didn't know about this. I'm gonna look this up real quick. Did you see the recent news on the Stop Nick Shirley Act in California? I did not. Devin
I
Seals just put that. Let me see what that is.
know they're trying
Stop.
to pass it, which it's so ridiculous that you would pass a law specifically to stop fraud from being, unmasked.
Yeah. California Democrats just passed the Stop Nick Shirley Act. Crazy. They're trying to stop him from exposing corruption. See, this is insane. That's insane, Devin. Thank you for highlighting that, Devin. That's insane to me, dude.
Yeah.
They talked about that on Joe Rogan's show. There's a clip here. Hold on. I'm gonna pull this up real quick. 1 second. Let me share this instead. Let me start this.
Nick Shirley started doing investigations into all sorts of other fraud that's all around Los Angeles with hospices and all these different things. And they're finding hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud.
But not
like
for
that.
much longer, because he could be facing a $10,000 fine.
Isn't that crazy?
According to the new California bill yesterday.
So this is a new bill. Instead of saying, wow, thank you for uncovering this fraud, they passed a bill that if you film things and you go to a place and identify that place, and then somehow or another those people get harassed or something because of it, you could get fined. What an insane response. What an insane response.
It's a cartel.
Instead of thanking someone for uncovering criminal fraud, you make a new law where you turn them into criminals.
These people are laundering more money than El Chapo.
Yeah.
Like this.
That's
what I keep trying to say.
It's billions. Billions and billions of dollars.
Real criminals. Like the Gotti, all these people we used to think were mobsters at the Italian shops back in the day, they couldn't even comprehend what's going on right now.
Dude.
Yeah, billions of dollars.
Wild.
Yeah.
That's wild.
And why don't these people think about that? I mean, it affects our economy. It affects, because the money is not going back into the local economies.
No.
You can tell that they're still living in poverty.
No, it's like the Somali fraud, man. Like all that Somali fraud, how much of that is getting sent overseas too, and these people and how much of that's what these people came from squalor. They've lived in squalor their entire lives. They're going to live in squalor in the United States. They're just going to have a big screen in the middle of it, and they're going to be fine living that way here. And they're going to send their money back to terrorist organizations or to whoever overseas, and it's just they're stealing our money. They're stealing our taxpayer money and sending it to all who knows what, and to accomplish who knows what. It's just and this. I mean, Nick Shirley. I don't. Again, he's one. I don't agree with everything that he has said recently. I think he said some. He's a young kid too. He's gonna say some dumb things every once in a while, but this investigative work that some of these guys are doing is very, very important, and we need more people to jump in. Like Cam Higbee, the work that he's doing is amazing work, and he's uncovered hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of fraud the same way, at risk to his own person all the time. That's another thing that people don't realize. Like Cam goes out and he's on the streets and he's going and investigating and he's talking to people, and at any moment he could talk to the wrong person and end up getting stabbed or shot. And it's insane to think about that. He's willing to put his life in danger to expose some of this stuff. And Nick Shirley's the same way. And it's very important. And then you see the government's like the California government not pushing back again. Oh man.
It just goes to show they are enemies of the people. They are, I don't understand how, it's unfathomable. I mean, but this also can kind of segue into that special operator that just got arrested for the bet that he made. What do you think about that?
I disagree with him doing that. Obviously, if you use classified information to enrich yourself, that is wrong, and you are going to go to jail for that. Or if you're caught, you're going to go to jail, or you're going to get in trouble for that. What I also disagree with is the fact that he gets arrested while who knows what percentage of Congress is doing the exact same thing. Not maybe not on bets on a betting market like that, but they're doing the exact same thing in the stock market, and they're doing the exact same thing in other markets, and they're making money off of buying into companies and then knowing that there something's about to get approved through part of the committees that they're a part of, or part of the information that they understand that come across their desk, and then they're buying into investing in these companies and making millions of dollars off of it. That's what, like, I'm calling out Marjorie Taylor Greene right now, because her company, she had a 51% stake in her company, her family's company or whatever it was when she joined Congress, and was worth $700,000 from that stake, and now she's worth over $25 million. And that's not a mistake. That's not that's a natural growth of this company over 5 years. The growth of that company skyrocketed because of the help that she was able to get it based on her position in Congress. Anybody who thinks differently has no idea how Congress and all the things that it affords you, and the introductions it allows you to make, and then the things that allows you to grease the wheels on, and how that works. This happens all the time. This is a reason why all these state, even state level senators, right? So like, it happens in North Carolina. It happens in every state there is. They join. It doesn't have to be a federal senator, federal Congress member. They'll join the state level, and they'll get a percentage of this company, and then they'll approve certain things that'll happen. And now this company will get these contracts, and now their percentage stake of this company is now worth 15, 20 times more than it was worth when they first got the stake. And it's because they helped grease the wheels for all this stuff. It's the same thing. They're doing the same exact thing. They're just not placing a bet on Polymarket, right? There's not, and everyone's like, well, he could have compromised the mission. Not really. He placed a bet that literally the bet was, will Maduro be in power after this date? And he put a bet on, no, he will not. That doesn't divulge any classified information, right? He's betting on the U.S. government winning on an operation that he knew that was going to go down, right? And again, I already said I disagree with him making the bet. That, like, obviously that's against the law, and you use. Go ahead.
That's my question. Is it against the law though? I think I see where the ethical issue is, but I'm having a hard time seeing where the legal issue is.
Yeah,
because it is unethical to enrich yourself with insider knowledge like that. But like you
right.
said, he didn't compromise the mission. No information was out. The only reason anybody even knows about it is because Polymarket got pissed off about it, and then they went to the FBI.
Yeah, you're right.
So nobody knew, and then they had to try to work really hard to figure out even who he was, because he was taking steps to hide his identity, which there's nothing wrong with that either. There's nothing wrong with being anonymous. I think the only thing that got him on eventually was tax issues, but you already made the point, which is we sit here and call these things out every day with Congress. We're calling them out every single day for years. And then now you want to make an example out of an actual hero who did something good for the country. I mean, it's so tone deaf. It's so absolutely ridiculous. And that's a great way for the military to suddenly lose faith and confidence in its leadership, because
100%.
now they can't trust that they're going to be taken care of. I mean, I understand people want, well, let's hold everybody to the same standard. That's great, but if you're not even going to hold these people to the standard, then don't hold him to the standard.
That's my view.
To the same standard, right?
Yes, so that's my view. If you're going to indict and arrest all these members of Congress, and let's even just shrink it. I don't even even these ones that grease the wheels for their companies they have ownership in, and blah 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 blah. I think all that's wrong too. But look, whatever. Let's just go just straight insider trading on the stock market, because there's a large percentage of Congress that has made tons of money on the stock market, and we can go through.
That's actually against the law. There's a
law. And they're doing it, and they're not. No one's getting in trouble for it ever. I mean, how much money has Nancy Pelosi made? How much money did Dan Crenshaw make? How much money have all these people made on the stock market because they have insider information? and none of them are getting in trouble for it. None of them are getting arrested for it. But this one dude who spent his entire life really being a nug, getting paid the minimum, right? Getting paid what is the equivalent of you're not making you're not in poverty, but you're also not making great money, right? Even if
Middle class.
right, you're middle class, you're if you want to actually have a decent amount of money, both like you and your spouse have to work, right? There's no getting around that. And so you're talking about people who have worked their ass off their entire lives, who have slung shit across the globe for these rich people who are doing the exact same things to a much higher scale and making much more money off of what they're doing. And then this dude makes, and again, it's not like he stole anything. He put 30 grand of his own money that he had saved up over whatever amount of time down on this, and he bet on himself, and then he used his own body to as a blood oath for that bet. Like, dude, yeah, I I understand the military getting mad at him, and like I understand that you could get in trouble in the military, and like you could be removed from that unit, and you could get kicked out from that, and blah 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 blah. I don't understand the U.S. government and the DOJ going after him like they did, and then announcing it publicly and blasting his name out like they did, and like making this a thing like that. That I highly dislike. They could have they didn't have to blast that out on social media and on through the media and put his name out there and his picture and all the stuff. Like they didn't have to do that, man. And they did.
Now he's
And that,
got a target on his back.
yeah, and that just put a really bad taste in my mouth. I just like that a lot. I just like it a lot.
Yeah, I'm not happy about this situation at all. It really bothers me. I think because you even talk about, just look at the scale of it. These insider trades, which are public, by the way, that's why they had the account on X that was tracking Nancy Pelosi's stock trades, because they're public. This bet thing wasn't public. There was no way to
Right.
track that. There was no way to know that he did that.
Oh, there was probably multiple large bets. Like he was definitely not he probably wasn't even near the largest bet, and there was no way to like again, yeah, like you said, Polymarket or whoever, I don't remember if it was Polymarket, but whoever the betting service got mad about it and then reported it later because they ended up having to do a big payout, and they probably scrutinized it, which is again, they're just like an insurance company. They're just like any of these other massive corporations that they make hundreds and hundreds or billions of dollars, right? Hundreds of millions or billions of dollars off of all these people betting this money. But the second they lose, they lose a little bit of money, they get pissed, and then they go after the little guy.
Yep. Yeah, and the scale of it too. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars with these Congress people, and this one's not even $1 million. It wasn't even $500,000. I mean, it's a big chunk of change, but it's nowhere near. You talk about the fraud that we've seen, the insider trading. It makes it look like chump change.
Yep.
I think we need to hound the DOJ. I think we need to hound Kash Patel and be loud about this, because I don't think this is acceptable personally. I mean,
Right. You saw what Trump said, right? About it.
No, I didn't.
They asked him about it, and he was like, he hadn't heard yet, or how he maybe he had heard, he just acted like he didn't hear, but he was like, no, what's going on? And they kind of told him the situation. He was like, well, so he bet for America to win, kind of like Pete Rose. And he was like, yeah. And he was like, well, at least he bet for us to win. That's good. At least he didn't bet against us. That would have been bad. That was all he said. So I could see Trump pardoning him. I just, again, the good news is I think he was I think he's like 22-year veteran anyway, so, or 22-year active duty guy. So like he's at the end of his time in anyway. My only thing is like, the military's gonna throw the book at him. They're gonna, like, even if the DOJ, even if he gets pardoned and the DOJ, and a pardon does actually stop you from military stuff too. So maybe they won't be able to like dishonorably and all that kind of stuff if he is pardoned. That would be the only saving grace, hopefully, for him. But it's just one of those things. Like, he didn't actually do anything that wrong. and we're gonna throw the book at, like, they're gonna throw the book at him for this. I mean, because they indicted, they arrested him, and the charges were like wire fraud, all kinds of other things. I mean, you're talking multiple charges, like, multiple felonies,
decades
and
of prison
yeah,
if he's
yeah,
convicted.
yeah, which is so that sucks, and it sucks for him, and I mean, I don't know. Yeah, I definitely agree that it was overblown, and it shouldn't have been handled that way. It shouldn't have been handled publicly like that.
Hmm.
That's not the win. I just don't understand the thought process for the DOJ, for cash, for any of I just don't understand the thought process behind pushing that as some great victory. Like, this is one of the dudes that risked his life on that operation, and finally made that's dude, it's like the guys, people don't realize that ever since all the nonsense that happened with Blackwater, ever since 2008, everything changed in 2008. So before, once you served, you did your time, and then you could get out, you could go contract, you could make some real money, and still doing the fight, doing the things, and obviously there's gonna be some bad eggs. It's gonna happen, man. I mean, there's bad eggs in active duty. There's bad eggs all over. It's just gonna happen. You punish those people accordingly when they do specific actions, and that you're just gonna have to acknowledge that that's gonna just happen. It's the way the world works. But 2008 is when they passed those sweeping kind of changes to where U.S. citizens that are not members of the military can no longer offensively hold weapons and act offensively in other countries. So you remember that whole like law that was pushed in '08? I don't know if you. So
No,
this is
no,
go ahead. It's just
I wasn't familiar. No.
it's the whole reason why. So you remember the Blackwater scandal, and then they changed to Z, and then he went overseas and kind of changed. It's why the whole reason Eric Prince moved out of the country and moved the headquarters out of the country and changed everything, right? So all this happened in 2008 because of some there was a lot of it was in certain other countries. It wasn't even in Afghanistan or Iraq. I think it was actually in, may have been Syria, or maybe even been Northern Africa. I can't remember the main ones behind it, but there was actually maybe in Yemen. Either way, there was some
shooting the cars on the highway.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was contractors. Blackwater was killing a lot of bad guys. We'll just put it that way. They were killing a lot of bad guys, and in doing so, they raised a lot of flags, because they were killing a lot of bad guys. And then some of the, obviously, anytime you're killing a lot of bad guys, there is going to be some times where people that aren't necessarily bad guys are going to get caught in that crossfire, which happens. It's war, and that also happened. And then there was investigations, some not so good, or some not so good things got brought up. Basically, sweeping legislation came through in '08, and they changed it to where now if you act offensively with a weapon in a foreign country as a U.S. citizen, you're considered a mercenary, and you can go to jail and you can lose your U.S. citizenship. So say if I were to work for any company, doesn't matter, if I were to work for a company and go overseas and act offensively with a weapon, like go engage targets offensively, and it was proved, no matter whether they were bad guys or not, it doesn't matter, I could lose my U.S. citizenship, and when I came back to the States, I could face jail time, or I could face charges for that. And that's the way it all works now. And so that's why all these contracting companies moved out of the country, and now they don't hire Americans anymore. They hire Chinese or Russians or all kinds of other people to do their bidding, because they can't hire Americans because it's not legal anymore. And that's why all the contracts you see now are all defensive security position contracts only. And it's changed the whole contracting game for all Americans. All right. So,
Okay.
So there needs to be, my thought process is, this is why I want the letters of marque that Senator Mike Lee has been talking about. Bring that back. Bring back letters of marque. We already have the government, the SAM.gov system to push through that. We already have we have the ways that we can make this work. and it can still be scrutinized, and it can still have vetting processes go through it, and it can still, there's like obviously some things might need to be worked out, and there needs to be some scrutiny on it. You just don't want private corporations going out there and waging wars for, on whoever for whatever. But
Mhm.
like that could be a positive step um, for low conflicts that the United States government doesn't necessarily need to get involved with, but does have interest in. So, if say China is pushing proxies in northern Africa that are disrupting things, and because they want to push the Belt and Road Initiative, and they're using militant proxy forces to do something here, the U.S. government may not want to respond with, obviously, with Marines or with Army or whoever. But you could put out a letter of marque and be like, hey, these guys are bad guys. This letter of marque is for to hit this or whatever. Same thing as for a vessel, right? But I don't know. This kind of thought process on that.
Well, a couple of years ago, that's interesting because a couple of years ago, I was trying to find a way to finance a private security company to go into Africa where the Christians were getting martyred uh, by the Muslims. And this was a couple of years ago, probably 3 years ago, and I was actually actively trying to figure out how I could get funding for a private military company to go in there. But I mean, that's a good idea. Thinking about the letters of marque, because yeah, it's not something that the U.S. government themselves would want to probably bother with because it doesn't really advance the U.S. policy at all. So I can understand it. It's more of a humanitarian thing than anything, a humanitarian security thing. So I think that would be a really good idea if we could do that. A letter of marque, and we could go overseas and try to kill some of these bad guys who are actually killing innocents and massacring Christians. Actually
Yeah.
kill people who we think need to be taken care of.
Yeah, and that's what would be required to allow U.S. citizens to go do that again, is letters of marque. That's the only protection we would have from, like, again, going over and doing that and acting offensively, and then not coming back and not being labeled as a mercenary and facing charges for that. So, to your point, and now they wouldn't, the funding aspect behind it is that you still would have to be funded. It would be private funding, so the government's not going to fund that. There would be potentially rewards, right? So like think of it like the old days back when, bounties, which bounties still kind of have rewards on them, and kind of that type of a framework. You also can do it where, like, say if there was a letter of marque on a vessel, like this vessel is carrying oil that whatever is sanctioned oil, whatever. But you can then, if you interdict this vessel, you can then sell that oil, through the U.S. markets, and that's how you get paid for the action that you just did. You're covered by the letter of marque. There's that way, and then for certain things though, like say like if it was hey, there's this terrorist organization killing Christians in Nigeria, and we want, we're going to put a letter of marque to go and stop that. There would probably have to be some kind of reward, but that's where diplomacy would come in, and there like the Nigerian government doesn't want these terrorist organizations acting either. They're just not powerful enough to stop it on their own, and they don't have the men or the resources to do so. But they do. The Nigerian government is also not like impoverished, right? So the U.S. government could work with them and be like, hey, we'll put up a certain amount of this reward for this to happen, and once it's accomplished, then this will be the reward paid out. And there's a lot of ways to make this work, where the taxpayer funding is minimized, and private companies and it would all be made up of veterans too, which is the best part of all this, is that now you get these people back to work doing good in the world and doing their skill set, and bringing back something good. Whereas like right now, like what do you do if you're an Army Ranger for 20 years, right? And you get out, and you've been an Army Ranger, you've done this so long. Like where do you go work in the world that really exemplifies that skill set that you learned during all that? There's nowhere civilian side. Like, yeah, you can go do private security, you can do executive protection, all that stuff. You would excel at that probably, but it's just not this. It's not it's just, again, it's not the same skill set. It's a little bit different, and there's not necessarily as much of it. And trust, I've looked into like I have friends that kind of work in the the executive protection world. That world, just like any of the private contracting world, is they always want, it's just like everything else. They always want you to have X amount of experience doing it. And you're like, well, how am I supposed to get, 5 years of executive protection experience doing it when I can't get any executive protection experience doing it? Like how am I supposed to get there to this point? So, the letters of mark it'd be a good way to just kind of launch some of these initiatives. But again, it's just one of those things, like, how do we get people to think outside the box for some of these problems that we have? Like we don't need the US Navy going to spend time and resources hitting pirates all the time, when you could have, a company would gladly take those on, and go hit those and do that kind of work and they would make plenty of money doing it, because they would just wait. They would monitor. They would wait until the pirates had, something that they could take from them, and they would go hit them, and they'd take them, and then the pirates would be gone, and now they'd make the money. Yeah, so
Yep.
it's just one of those. Well, we'll see. But here's one last thing I want to pull up real quick. Where'd it go? Maybe dang it, did I close it? Oh, here it is. Let me share this real quick. We were talking about earlier. Share this instead. The IRS changes.
Okay.
All right, so this is coming. So this just dropped, yesterday. So the IRS is adding where you have to disclose. Let me see, where was it? Public money and tax exempt status. So this is what. So for those of you who don't know, any 501c3, which is a nonprofit, they have to file what's called a 990, an IRS form 990. And the 990, basically, you have to disclose. It's just it's all of the money that came in. You don't have to disclose exactly where all that money came from, but you do have to disclose if you hit certain levels of federal funding. You have to disclose that. You have to disclose if you've got funding from like state or federal. You have to disclose assets. You have to disclose, like, it's a snapshot of your funding and like how much money you bring in, so that you can be scrutinized. And then if you are sending that money somewhere, like salaries, any salary over $100,000, you have to disclose on there. So all the things. But what they are adding in, and where was it? Yeah, so here it is.
Now you can make that much money in the nonprofit world. That's crazy.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. So I called out Paul Rykoff. I don't know if you've heard of that dude. He's the guy that started the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans Association, which is a nonprofit for Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, which actually doesn't even do anything for them. And then over 60% of their revenue goes to, or 60% of all their revenue goes to salaries. And I did a whole article on them a little over a year or so ago. I signed up for their services to try to get help and get assistance and stuff, and all the things that they said they offer. Can never get any help, can never get a call back, can never get an email back. All they do is just send you emails for donations. They just want you to donate. And I'm like, I'm a veteran. I need help. I was in both of those wars. I need help, and like never get anything. And that dude paid himself $2.4 million. So
Wow.
these guys, like, that's what they do. But so this is fiscal sponsorship arrangements that are obscure right now. You're gonna have to show where all that comes from. So that's kind of good. All right. So if an organization receives public funds or tax deductible donations, it should be prepared to show who controls the money and where it goes. So that's the key right there.
Yeah.
So that change to the 990s is going to be big, because right now, again, I could pull up a 990 and show you, but there's a space in the 990 where you have to show if you received like grants, but you don't have to put where the grant came from unless you went over 750 grand. Then you have to file a different form to show that it was from federal. If it was from federal, then you have to show that it was from federal. You don't have to show anything for state, right? And then you don't have to show anything from a grant from it could be a grant from a private organization. So you could get $20 million from a private organization, and you don't have to show who that was from or what, or like whatever. You just put it as a grant for $20 million. So right now, there can be a lot of what could be considered dark money, like you don't know where that actually came from. Now, that would probably raise a red flag, and the IRS probably would look into that, right? But the public can't look into that. So this is going to give the public a more ability to scrutinize it, which is actually important because this allows the IRS to still maintain a smaller footprint because they know the public is going to scrutinize some of this stuff for them. Like, hey, and then once I if I go through a 990 now and I'm like, hey, this is all messed up. Look at all this stuff, and then we highlight it and it goes viral. Now the IRS can pick that up and be like, oh, look, we need to audit these people, and then that saves taxpayer money, time, and too, because now they can just be like, boom, now we know who to audit. Someone for free did the work, so that's a good thing.
You can be rewarded with some of that money too.
Oh, really?
If you turn in, I was talking to somebody about the pistachio thing, and there's a process you go through, but if it ends up that there is some fraud going on, or that something illicit is going on, then and the government recovers funds, they'll give you a reward from that amount too. So there's a incentive for people to actually go through and find this stuff too.
Well, I mean, it's not necessarily why I do it, but that's cool. I mean, that's a good. There is an incentive. That's cool.
Good thing to know,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, dude, you got anything else you want to chat about real quick, or anything you want to highlight?
It's been fun. I just want to say thanks for having me again. It's always good to talk to you about this stuff, and I know we have a good time on X, but it's good to talk in person every now and then.
Yeah, man. Yeah, conversations are where it's at. Getting some of this information out, and people. And what's good too is like I think people don't read as much. People are much more likely to just put something on the background and just kind of listen and maybe hear some information that they wouldn't have otherwise got or understood or listened to otherwise, or read or understood otherwise. So yeah, I think it's great. But yeah, man, appreciate you coming on again, and I'm sure I'll have you on again because it's always good to have conversations and talk about all this stuff. There's always going to be all the new. Hold on, before you go though, I do want to hit a few of these questions.
Okay.
Because I always forget that we got all kinds of awesome people on here. I'm new to the whole podcasting world, guys. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, gotta go.
All right, let me see.
Your chats, man.
Yeah, man. Oh, this is just a joke, but I polled 100 women. What is their favorite shampoo? And the number one answer was "Get out of my shower." That's great. Yeah, it's funny. All right, good one. All right.
Polled 100 women too, but it's different.
Yeah. What do we got here? Wonder what kind of insider trading is from Devin. Well, I wonder what kind of insider trading is behind this, because all this is around the time that Berkshire Hathaway announced its main move to China's market. Oh, dang, that's another thing I didn't know. Huh.
Yeah. Interesting.
That is interesting. I'll have to look into that. They moved completely to China's marketplace? Is that legal? Dang, that's insane.
They might have to pay something to the United States in order to do that. I'm not sure.
Dang.
If they're still operating in the United States. I don't know if they are. They must not be.
Yeah.
But that's what's his name's thing. What's his, the rich guy?
Warren Buffett?
Warren Buffett. That's it. That's his
yeah.
company, right?
Wait, let me see what's another. Hold on, here's traditionally Sarah just saw this morning Muslims would make up 3% of Australia commit 100% of Australia's terrorism. Yep. I mean 0% surprised at that. Yeah, I mean, in America you either have Muslim terrorism or you have troon terrorism. So there's one or the other, that's it. There's pretty much nothing else at this point. Those are the only two.
You know what's funny about that is Iran is a big you know what's big there is ladyboy type people.
Hmm.
They're big on their trans people. Don't want to mess up the wording here, but yeah, they're big on those trans people. I think they do the surgeries and everything in Tehran.
All right, add links. Oh crap, I'm terrible at that. It is all of my socials are the same. It is except for I think TikTok maybe is a little different, but whatever. TikTok's kind of dumb anyway.
Oh yeah, I'm on TikTok now too. If anybody is out there watching and wants to find me, it's based and biased on TikTok.
And put that on YouTube at least. It's at GBNT 1952 on all of them. I think TikTok is underscore. It's at GBNT underscore 1952. I think it's the only different one. I think it's. I remember somebody took it. You know, it's just rude.
Yeah.
All right, we got Justin Wright. Dearborn, Michigan already does Sharia law under the table. Yes, they do. They do. And for anybody who has never been to Dearborn, so it's like Dearborn is just it is a small like suburb of Detroit, and it is like going into a different country. It is insane. It is so fully Islamized or Muslimized or whatever you want to call it. It's yeah, it is literally like a different country. I mean, you'll see like you'll go down a street and all the signs are in Arabic, and it's insane. It's insane.
Yeah, I did an air show up there once, and I was shocked because there's just so many Middle Eastern people walking around the air show. You know, with their hijabs and everything. It's just
Oh, it's
caught me by
slam
surprise.
packed. You can thank Ford for that. By the way, he's the one that he is such a racist that he literally brought in like he established the Dearborn community with a bunch of Muslims 100 years ago, whatever it was, like long time ago, because he didn't want black people. He hated Jews. He's a huge racist, which is insane to me that then you turn to the Muslims because of that. Like whatever, it's so weird, right? But
Yeah.
but he's the one that actually established that, and he brought him into working his factories and stuff. Super weird.
Well, that's all part of that psyop. You know, people who keep saying that the Jews in Israel are worse than the Muslims, and that's just absolutely false. It's just, I mean, I've been to Israel. I don't know if you have, but there are.
Yeah.
And what's funny, and I did respond to Mario's thing yesterday about no Jews have been messed with in Iran. Well, no Muslims have been retaliated against in Israel since the beginning of the war either. So, what
Yeah.
you can see a huge difference when you're walking around Israel. You see Muslims walking around, you see Arabs, you see regular people, normal human beings, and then if you look over the border at Jordan, it's like a third world over there. It's like a whole nother world. It's
Yep.
so people who think that Israel or Jews are worse than the Islamists are just absolutely out of their minds. It's not true. And for every bad thing that Israel does or the Jews do, trust me, there's 100 worse things that the Islamists are doing.
Yep.
So,
I mean, nobody's perfect, right? And there's going to be bad people in every society, every demographic. It doesn't matter. Like the IDF soldier that smashed that statue and everyone made a huge deal of it. I'm like, one, he's probably 18, and like 18-year-olds are idiots. And you know what? Like, yeah, and he's not a Christian, so like to him, it didn't mean anything to him, and he's an idiot. Like, do you know how many nugs? Like, how many Marine nugs did you see do stupid stuff? In country. How many
yeah,
nug Army dudes did I see do stupid stuff? Yeah, you slap them. Like, what are you doing? Stop being an idiot.
yeah, and that's but the difference is accountability. You know what I mean? Like that guy was held accountable for that. How
Yep.
many Hezbollah terrorists have been held accountable for the atrocities that they've committed?
None. I mean,
There's very
they're
few.
encouraged to do it. Yeah.
It's because we're the ones with standards. They don't have the
Yep.
standards.
Yep. Amanda, yes, I agree. They need to declare property owned by nonprofits and religious institutions because charities are buying up land and left without being transparent and defined in public records. Absolutely. Absolutely. It's that the churches and again, I understand why they initially did this. I mean, this was, back in the day, I understand why it was done this way. You also think about it before, you know, the IRS didn't have the power, you know, before the internet. Like think how difficult that would have been to like try to
They
manage
weren't
all of that.
around. They weren't
Right.
around at the founding of our nation either. They
Yeah, exactly. So I understand like why some of this was the way it was before, but now with the internet and the way with AI, they could have systems that could help assist in how just aggregating, collating, and just managing all of this data. There's no excuse now to not require churches to put 990s out just the same as all the other 501c3s and to to so that they can be scrutinized. And again, 99% of all the churches and mosques, like there's going to be a lot of the mosques that aren't doing anything wrong either, right? But they're the Westboro Baptist Church, right, would be a great example of one that probably needs to show where it's putting all of its money. There's probably other examples too, and you know that just needs to happen because it can't we can no longer sit back and blissfully just assume that everyone's good and is pro America and is doing great things for Americans. We just can't do that anymore.
Yeah, and it's become, churches can easily become a racket for people who, look how many mega churches that these pastors have become millionaires and having these mansions because there's no scrutiny on
Yep.
their finances, so they can do pretty much whatever they want.
Yeah, Devin said Tom Tillis in North Carolina seems like he's trying to make a bid for presidential race. He constantly tells me it's Tom Tillis has been he's been a very
He's
very
so
big
hated
disappointment.
in North Carolina too. Nobody in North Carolina likes that guy.
I
I
can't
don't know
stand
how
him.
he got reelected.
I don't know. Again, it's just because nobody pays attention and they just go and they just select incumbent or or they just do red, and they don't look at who or if there'd have been a better option, and it makes it difficult to do anything. So, but Texas Motherbird, thank you so much. She watches all the streams. Thank you so much for hanging out with us all the time.
Thank you.
All right, let's see if there's anything else. Well, let me see. Oh, we got a correction here. Berkshire Hathaway comment, it was a false. I checked it after that. He only bought 10% firm and then sold it all. Okay. Okay. All right. That makes me feel better at least. I was like, dang, dude, that's insane if they did that. All right.
That's interesting that he knew Trump was going to go after Iran. It's like, oh, so he didn't get fooled by Trump, apparently.
Right.
All these other people
All the other people did.
fooled by
Yeah.
Trump.
I just saw that the guy that made a bet on Maduro takes 60 years. Oh, dude. That's insane. Hope it doesn't go that way. Hopefully Trump pardons him and he just again, I mean, my main thing is like I just hope they don't hope he doesn't go to jail, and then two, I hope they don't take all of his military benefits and all that stuff too. I mean, he's 22 years, I think is what it was. Like, it's terrible. That's terrible.
It is terrible, man, and it's not something that deserves that kind of punishment.
No, that's insane. They're acting like they're literally acting like he walked into somewhere, robbed 20 banks, killed 100 people, and like just did the worst thing possible. You hear my toddler down there screaming? I don't know if my mic picked
Oh,
it
the
up.
baby! I hear the baby.
Yeah, baby down there. Yeah, she's. It's about nap time for her, but
yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks again, man. It was awesome. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and please again like and subscribe if you haven't yet. And we'll be on sometime. I'll be on next week. I'll put out probably Monday what the next show is going to be. But keep your wits about you. Know what propaganda is, and we'll see you on the next show. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, y'all.
See y'all. Thank you.